Hi, everybody. Thanks for skipping dinner or having dinner early. I'm not sure what you did, but you stuck it through. So I did offer, if everybody's kind of sleepy and in sort of a food coma, we could do a guided meditation instead if you want, or maybe do a little power nap. It's up to you. But if not, I'll go ahead and get started. Got my pointer. So I'm Robert Wagner. Hi. I'm Mr. Minion on the Twitters, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I just did a quick introduction. So about closer to 20 years of InfoSec experience now. My first job in InfoSec was as a third shift SOC analyst, where we were running a 24/7 SOC with only 4 people and 1 floater. So things were probably not as difficult back then, right? We were dealing with like Slammer and Sasser and Beagle and Netscape, but I'm a co-founder of Hack for Kids, where you may have seen our table over in one of the villages. We're a charity that teaches kids about internet safety, security, and ethics. We use the lure of hacking, because hacking's cool, to trick them into STEM sort of stuff, right? And they love it. I'm on the board of the ISSA in Chicago. I love all things dogs, motorcycles, and scuba. And you can see I've even, at points, married 2 of my loves together. So that's my 50-pound dog. He's no longer with us, but he rode motorcycle for 14 years with me and was awesome. And I'm an honorary wolf pup dad, too. Those are some wolf pups at Wolf Park that I honorarily adopted, which means I got to visit him once. And as you can tell, I had bacon in my pockets because they were honoring me. But getting on to the actual talk. So this talk is based on a living deck that was formed out of notes that I started taking back when I was that third shift SOC analyst, right? And I started to run into a problem that I think everybody starts to run in, which was there was never enough budget to buy the things we needed, right? It was like, boss, there's a new problem and we need a new person or a new tool or something like that to cover it. And the boss would say, yeah, it's first month into the fiscal year and we've already spent all the budget. So you're gonna have to wait till next year comes around. Make do with what you can. And that happens everywhere, right? We need free, easy ways to fill our gaps, unless you're lucky enough to have like a really great breach, right? I mean, what's a company here in Milwaukee that had a huge breach and they got a blank check after that to get all the security they want? Yeah, it's nobody. Nobody gets a blank check to do everything they want. So as I was going to HackerCons and I would be listening to talk and someone would say, and if they had just done this, well, I was like, shit, well, I'm writing that down. So this is a collection of all those things that, some of them are common sense. Some of them, if you're new to InfoSec or if you weren't at that talk, maybe it's a little gem for you to take home. But first thing that I noticed as I was talking with my various peers in their organizations was that the most successful teams always started by focusing on the most important tool, security tool in their organization first. It's the best place to start. It's the tool everybody has in their organization. What's that tool? Yeah, it's you. Not to call you guys tools, that's not my intent, but I noticed that teams that worked together to teach each other stuff, that had bosses that let them go to hacker conferences and stuff like that, did way more than the tool-heavy shops, right? I saw a team of 5 out-security a team of 25, because the 25 had just like push-button tools, and that's all they knew how to do. Where the other guys were teaching, men and women were teaching each other how to script and how to write like their own rootkit for point-of-sales devices and all sorts of stuff like that. And that team was fantastic. So. When we talk about, who here hates this Venn diagram? I hate this Venn diagram because like every salesperson in the world uses it. But I also hate it because it never looks like this. We never have this beautiful balance of people, process, and technology, and we give equal amounts of attention and dollars to all of them. No, instead we tend to do what? We focus on technology, and what does that do to your InfoSec program? It makes it look like this. And nobody wants this as a description for their InfoSec program, right? So how do we avoid that? So how do we avoid that? And again, how do we avoid that when our boss has been telling us, yeah, there's no more budget left for this year? So let's start with the people. So I know everybody here probably knows about this. People that may be watching this later, especially managers, pay attention. because there is so many free and cheap resources to level up your people, right? Quick thanks to many of the people that I got this information from. Every major conference has their talks out on typically YouTube these days. HackerCons like Bsides are cheap. When we were trying to get trained up, I love SANS. SANS classes are freaking great, right? But back then they were like $4,000 or $5,000, and they're more expensive now. So the boss would be like, well, 3 of you get to go this year, and 3 of you, right? And we all had to take turns. But at the same time, I learned so much from events like this. So if you're a manager and you're not letting your whole team, seriously, go to an event like this where it's like $100 or so, for some of them, and for the Bsides even cheaper, like 20 or free, you are pissing nobody minds swear words here, right? It's okay, yeah, okay. If you hate swear words, say fuck, no, don't say anything, no, I'm sorry. But really, you need to be encouraging your teams to go to events like this and giving them the time to do it. I knew one company, it was big financial, their CISO would let 180 people take the day off to do an internal CTF once every year. Freaking amazing. I meet other people new to the industry that are just trying to get really good at their job, and I'm like, hey, why didn't you come to the meetup or whatever? And they're like, oh yeah, my boss wouldn't give me like the 3 hours in the afternoon off to go to ISSA or one of the other meetups. That's ridiculous, and that's how you burn people out, so don't do that. Lots of great people here to learn from. A quick list of just some of the people that have been really great resources of information for me. Hacks for Pancakes, I know you all know, but she just puts out so much information out there for free to help people out, as does everybody else. I started getting into some API security, and I found a couple of API resources recently as well, so check those people out. And Jesus, Mick Douglas puts out these like amazing Twitter threads of like just awesome common sense security stuff. So read his threads if you get a chance. But how do we, so that's us, like our teams. How do we level up our users, right? We fight for the users. One of the best ways I've ever seen was a presentation by Ben 0XA, and he did this at DerbyCon like 2012, 2014, somewhere around there. But the idea was genius. Instead of forcing people to watch those frickin' security videos that you'd rather rub glass in your eyes than actually pay attention to, he decided to gamify security awareness. So it was simple. He just made a quick announcement to his organization. He was the CISO there, and he said, hey, we're gonna have a security contest. You're gonna start seeing some of those things that maybe you would have learned about if you would actually watch the video. And every person that reports any particular thing, the first person to report this particular incident or whatever, gets maybe, I don't know, $5 gift certificate to Dunkin' Donuts. He's gonna keep score at the end of the week, $200 to the person who did the best, right? By midweek, people were trash talking. You're going down. I'm totally going to get more points than you. They start reporting like the CFO for not wearing their badge as they're walking through the organization. Somebody called really quickly to report this strange black box that was just outside one of the side doors. Yeah, it was a rodent control box. But still, people were paying attention. And the best one, 15 minutes after he starts, he gets a call from a woman who's very excited. She's like, Ben, I found one of those things. And he's like, what things? She's like, the things that you said with the security and the stuff. And he's like, we haven't started yet. What are you seeing? She's like, oh, this thing pops up on my computer every once in a while and says, click here to authorize. I don't know what it is, but it's something like that. Just click here to say okay. Yeah, 15 minutes in, he had a real security incident. He had turned his people into carbon-based intrusion detection sensors, and it was beautiful. Word of warning. I did talk to a company that actually tried this as well. They had a few users that were a little over-ambitious. They started downloading Nessus and scanning for vulnerabilities to really, yeah, and if your users can do that, you also have a bigger problem, right? They shouldn't be downloading Nessus and baby cats onto the computers, but I love the ambition, right? So leverage it. So that's some people. How about process? Let's talk about process. I stumbled across this as a presentation about, using chaos engineering in security. So chaos security engineering, and it's brilliant. So most of you have heard of chaos engineering, right? Netflix has been doing a ton of stuff with it. They've got Chaos Monkey, and the idea in chaos engineering is randomly break shit and make sure the company still stays operational. And the fact that Netflix is like, yeah, you can do that. You can totally do that. You can break anything you want on purpose, and we better stay up and running. Brilliant. So how do we apply this to security? So the IEEE and Kennedy Takura published an entire white paper about this called CloudStrike. He presented on it at Bsides Berlin. I was not there for that one, but that would have been cool. But in any event, he presented a whole idea on how do we apply that same kind of chaos to InfoSec. So the concept's simple. Instead of breaking stuff, we're going to inject flaws into our process and into our infrastructure and stuff. So you create user Bob, and then maybe you accidentally apply a policy to him that he shouldn't have, giving him more access rights, and then you see how far you can get into the organization if that mistake happens. Because of course that mistake would never really happen, right? We wouldn't really apply a bad policy to someone. And it's a great idea. And the framework that they created has a whole scoring system. They've created, much like MITRE has, categories for all the different kind of things that you can inject as flaws into your security, and then see how bad it can get. And if you've got a red team, leverage them. Tell them we're going to start making bad things happen in whatever environment, and then see if you can find them and get in. It's great. So passwords. Why are passwords still really the bane of our existence? Hopefully you saw some of Wolf's stuff over in the tracks just before this. But not only does one simply not use the same password for banking and Twitter, but how many of you think you've got like domain admins that are like, oh shit, I have to make a really strong password for my banking account or Home Depot or whatever, and I've already memorized this random character, 18-character random password for domain admin because I want it to be really strong, and then they need another one, so they go and use it out on the internet. I'm not a domain admin, I was a server admin, and I certainly did that shit, right? It took me a long time to memorize 18 random characters. So obviously the real answer for this right now is MFA right now, and maybe like Wolf was saying, maybe some passwordless authentication, but why in God's name did it take over 20 years for a cartoon to teach us that this is wrong, right? This whole leet speak kind of thing. This cartoon at this point, who's seen this ACD card? Yeah, right? We love it. But it took a cartoon to teach our bosses it, and they still won't change in many organizations their typical password policy from 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, well, 8 years ago when this came out, it took about 3 days to guess that troubadour leet speak thing. These days, especially if you've got the hash, we're talking like milliseconds on some of this stuff, right? It's just terrible. So I have suggested and seen organizations go, you know what? If you just do a passphrase, and when I'm suggesting it to just like home users, I'm like, go and find, take your favorite song, go 3 lines down, go maybe a couple words in, and the next 5 words, that's your passphrase. You'll never forget it, right? And organizations are saying, if you do that, if you've got a passphrase that's like 24 characters long, you don't got to change it for the next year, right? Absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, we don't want them to use it on all sorts of different machines, right? But that's so much better than you have to change your password every 30 days, and people, it's a mess. Now, KeePass is free. Password vaults are a good stopgap measure until we can get multi-factor's not free, right? Unfortunately. There's Authy out there. I've seen people use it for personal use. I've never seen Authy deployed at scale. So has anybody seen? Yeah, right. It's a good tool, but I've never seen it used in an enterprise. So my red team friends and I will argue about this because they're like, yeah, but if I fish my way onto their laptop and KeePass is there, I've got all their passwords. And I'm like, yeah. And if I sneak in with the smokers through the back door and they have one password for everything and it's on a sticky note, I still have all the passwords. So I think, and most people I talk to agree, getting a password vault at least is a free stopgap measure for this. I wish there were easier ones. Like I wish there was a password vault I could give my grandma and it would just like work everywhere, right? But there's a bit of a learning curve. So people in process, great. Now let's talk a little bit about technology. So who here has Java 6 running somewhere in their organization. Yeah, thank you for being honest. Those of you that didn't raise your hands, if you're working at any organization of size, you're either lying to me, or, even worse, you don't know. Because I guarantee you, if you have, work in a large company, it's there somewhere. And it's the thing that makes the company all their money. It runs in the back. It's what makes all the money for the organization. The developer died 10 years ago. No one knows how to fix it. And that's a problem. So, until we can get someone to fix it, what can we do? Because we've got this old Java. You have to have these old Java agents, old versions of Java to connect to it, or it doesn't work. And that's where our problem happens, right? Is when that Java connects to the internet, because then you're owned. So a lot of people don't know this, but every one of those Java installs, the client side, has a user agent string, and you can block that user agent string at the proxy. So it's not a perfect solution. Obviously, my laptop goes off the network. You're going to have to put a GPO out there that says, went off the network, Java doesn't run at all. Either that or backhaul everybody through the VPN, but if you really want the network people to hate you, you could do that. So you really don't need Java going outside the organization. Either get a dev to fix that code eventually, or Anyway, okay, good. So this is from blueteamer.blogspot.com. This is every executable extension that you should be blocking at your email gateway. And I don't mean some of them. Be like Nike and just frickin' do it. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, Robert, but I got some people that might need a .mas file. What would I do? And to that I say, if Apple can tell us we can do without a frickin' headset jack and we're just going to like it, then we can do it. Now the key here is a really nimble exception policy, right? There will be a few people that can get it, and you'll put them in a little domain group, and those people get permissions for that file, and that's frickin' it. Those are the only people that get it. I once had a peer that, for his HR people who had to open up PDFs all the time, he gave them all iPads. He's like, you can read PDFs on an iPad, and that's it. Maybe a Chromebook might work for that as well these days, but there are ways to limit the exposure. You don't have to give everybody the access to this. And trust me, the moment you put that block list in place, you'll know who actually needs it, right? It'll be whack-a-mole. They'll start popping up, and you bang them down, and it'll be great. So, antivirus. Just about as helpful as, right? So it's not completely useless though. Antivirus doesn't do a whole lot for us at this point, but it's not completely useless. One nice thing is every major AV vendor out there will allow you to put in your own IOCs. So if you're back here and you're dropping these in, the best threat feed is the one you make yourself, right? So if you're dropping these into like Cuckoo or something like that, you're extracting your own IOCs, even if you don't have like a reverse engineer. This is a good start. So you pull out your IOCs, you drop those into your antivirus, and then you start looking to see if those IOCs are out there. Now you could do this with your vuln scanner too, provided that you're authenticating to every device out there. That's traditionally been really hard for a lot of companies. I don't know any company that successfully has just gotten in everywhere. I see some companies that get most of it, and that's great. But AVs, just by policy, has to be everywhere, right? So leverage that shit. Heuristics was the first attempt to do things without a signature, right? It's off at a lot of places, and I suspect because it can be really freaking noisy, and the IT people didn't want to have to tweak that, so they just turned it off. But it can still find some low-hanging fruit. Last but not least, is anybody actually checking the AV alerts? So many of my red team friends have like stomped through like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, just banging on shit left and right. Nobody's checking the alerts, so yeah, nobody sees it. Emmet. So, so Emmet, who's heard of Emmet? I hope, yeah. So, it can be really hard to deploy. Like, it'll break everything in your freaking organization if you're not careful. It's designed to protect the memory of your apps. There are bypasses for it, like ROP chains and stuff. And yes, it was end of life back in 2018. But tell me, what does every ATM in North America still run on right now? Does anybody know? Fucking XP, yeah. So there are places that still might help you.
Got rid of OS2.
What's that?
Finally got rid of OS2.
Right, yes, what for? Absolutely. Frick. Oh my god. Actually, that was probably more secure because nobody was writing exploit code for Warp 4. And as well as, how much Win Server 2012 is still maybe frickin' out there. So you can leverage it, test the hell out of it, and not in production. And it'll reduce the number of tools that an attacker can use. You're just making it harder for the attacker to win. So I love this next section. This is all about landmines, deception practices, canaries, whatever you want to call them, but they're freaking brilliant and they're so easy. So very first one is, so these are like honey tokens too, is what people call them. Honey files is a brilliant way to get started. So you get together with the IT admins, you put a hidden file into the golden image, you bury it deep down into the OS, you drop it on everybody's box, push it out with WSUS or whatever Microsoft calls it today, and then you make it juicy. You start naming that file something like password list or PWD list or something like that. Maybe even randomize that shit. But most attackers will not be able to resist that when they see it. Now, there's some chances for false positives, right? If someone drops to the command line and does a dir/s, which I have not seen a user do in a hell of a long time, but that could trigger it. You got to make sure that your AV doesn't trip it off, or that your phone scanner doesn't touch it either. But just doing this alone, you can be monitoring for at least some evil throughout your entire user base with one file, right? This one file, you alert on access to this file. You either have a minor chance of a false positive, or you've got someone trying to lurk through your file systems. So honey accounts, even better fidelity on this. Put an account in the domain, call it domain admin X. In the description itself, put literally the text. The password is, and some dumbass password that you're never actually going to use. It doesn't matter. But when someone uses their domain enumerating tools to pull back the entire frickin' domain, they're going to see this and they're going to think you are the dumbest MCSE that has ever walked on the earth. But ha-ha! They're the dumbest hacker that's ever walked on the earth, because you're going to put that in the admins group. You're going to make sure no one can use it. Oh, sorry, I went too far. And if someone, again, you're just monitoring for one tiny little thing. We're talking like less than a K worth of logs here. Someone trips on that account, you've probably got someone either lurking around or someone really needed domain admin so that they could get out and watch those cat videos. More landmines. Who here is actually a DBA? Oh, thank God, because they are such prima donnas, right? Oh, you can't mess with my freaking IOPS. And doing like database monitoring, stuff like that, usually a big project. So instead, we make something like, you get together with 1 or 2 of your DBAs, you make either a database or maybe even just a table. Again, call it something juicy, something that someone would want to steal from you. Credit cards, some sort of intellectual property, maybe blueprints if you're at a manufacturing firm. Something that they're going to want. And then you don't publish a schema anywhere. Nobody knows about this table or database. And then you just alert again on access. Very simple, very fast. If you get hits on it, on any of these things, really, now you can come back around to the boss and go, we found evidence of some shit. It's like cockroaches, right? If we found this, there's probably a lot more of it. We need to start taking a deeper look at things. And then this last one, so beautiful in its simplicity. This is Invoke Run, as you can get it from GitHub. It actually loads a fake set of credentials into memory on every system that it's running on. You put it in the startup routine on all your Windows boxes, really. And then if anybody tries to use that account in the domain, you alert on use. Unless you actually have users that are trying to win that competition by using Mimikatz to scrape out creds, which is the only way I can see this false positive, you've got evil amok in the network, for sure. So there's even, so I just found out there's honey tokens for the cloud. Well, not just found out, but a little while ago. So there's some caveats with it. So Project Space Crab was released back in 2018. It was a way to mass manufacture honey tokens for cloud. And it was brilliant. Until about 6 months later, when Rhino Security Labs found a way to detect booby trap tokens. Now that means your attacker still has to know that there's a detection and actually try for it, so you still might be able to leverage it, and this is for mass-produced tokens, right? The issue was there's some CloudTrail, parts of the CloudTrail that don't log certain niche services, and partly because Amazon's own error messages were tipping off if you triggered them the right way that the token was booby trapped. But for like a manually created token, honey token to booby trap, I believe that still works. It was just the mass-produced ones that seem to have this issue. Yes, other quick down and dirty ways to stop attackers in their tracks. So just using a web form and having people authenticate it just once a day when they first log in, maybe a little more difficult with everybody working from home. If you're really top secret-y kind of place, you might even ask your users to just allow a particular site once per day. So like the first person that goes to Google that day gets a pop-up and it says, is it okay to go to Google? And that user says yes. Now I know that sounds crazy, but it doesn't matter if the user answers yes to everything. The intent is to stop scripted things from finding their way out. They're not going to, the script isn't going to understand this pop-up that asks for validation. There's a person in the middle attack in WPAD. Those two null routes, depending on your IP v4 or v6, should take care of that. And as long as you're gonna do that anyway, I want you to disable NetBIOS. I know, it's just like that frickin' Java 6 that's out there, right? Somewhere in the organization, you gotta have NetBIOS running because some important service is gonna go down. That's fine, but you need to have a plan. Whether it's a 1-year plan, 5-year plan, that shit has got to go. Who here has either heard of or used Responder in an organization? Responder loves NetBIOS, because Responder, amongst many things that it does, sits there and waits for NetBIOS broadcast, and as soon as it hears one, it goes, yes! Yes, I am the server you're looking for. Just hand everything to me. It'll be fine. It is one of the first tools many red teamers will deploy onto a compromised system, and NetBIOS makes it very easy to leverage that tool, along with NT-Landman and all that kind of stuff. But get rid of NetBIOS. We really don't need it anymore. Making the internal name servers not do recursive lookups to external sites, another good plan. That's the proxy's job, right? Internal name servers should be resolving names internally. And again, the idea here is just to make it difficult for scripted things to get out, because they don't know about the frickin' proxy, especially if it's one that you have to authenticate to once a day. Labs. So who here has local admin still running on some systems somewhere? Yeah. Oh God. Now are you using Labs too? Yeah. And is it working great for you? Perfect. Yeah, it's fantastic. So it's something in security that Microsoft did that works. Which is a weird sentence to say, but it works pretty damn well. There are some bypasses for it, but the idea is simple. If you've got local admin on every system, it just randomizes the password on every system running local admin, so we can't get instantaneous lateral movement using local admin. So it works pretty well. If you're forced to use local admin, deploy this. It should be free. If your sales rep tries to charge you for it, kick them in the ass or something like that, because this should just come with your license. And then this last one, got this from Dave Kennedy in a talk that he did. It's a simple GPO that just says deny access to this system, all your workstations and laptops from the network. And you just apply it to everything out there. And obviously not your servers. But there's no reason ever that anybody should have to connect to my workstation or my laptop, right? If IT needs to, it's a GPO. They can change the damn GPO. Deploying that out makes Dave's life miserable, because then he has to start spear phishing each and every target, one at a time in the organization, unless there's some vulns out there that he can leverage. So fun with algorithms. That really is my dog. By the way, I had this prop pipe sitting around, and when COVID hit, and I'm like, I got to teach my dog a new trick. That was it. She's a ham, so 3 tools that will essentially get you the same thing here. So there's something called R. You can also leverage SciPy with maybe some Tableau or some other visualization tool, or you can apply for the Splunk developer's license and do it with Splunk as well. I actually learned this when I was at Splunk, but it's really clever. So everybody wants to like sell you their awesome frickin' machine learning stuff, right? Don't do it until you've had a chance to actually play with just some raw machine learning and see if it's going to be helpful for you. So here's a great example. If you go to cms.gov and you go to that button that says Research Statistics all the way over on the right, you can download all sorts of healthcare data, like prescriptions. Now, HIPAA says that you're not going to know who that prescription was for, but you can get everything else. Who wrote it, what it was for, when it was written, anything, pretty much everything else on that prescription other than the person that got it is available in data. So some of the guys doing some research downloaded a year's worth of data, prescription data specifically, and then they filtered it out for just the opioid prescriptions, figuring there might be something interesting there, right? Now at this point, they didn't know what they were going to find, but all they did was run it through two simple algorithms. It's an algorithm available in all those different tools that I told you about. So the first algorithm is called PCA. And what PCA does is it takes all of the different columns basically that you have there and reduce it down to X number of points. So that the first three that you see there, PC1, PC2, PC3, that's the algorithm figuring out, okay, I can reduce this data down to X number of points, and we said 3 because you can plot it on a 3D graph. So that gives you your reduction. And then you pass that output through just one more algorithm. It's called k-means. It's a common clustering algorithm, and that's where we get this 3D graph where you see most of the things clustered. So those are all prescriptions. They're all clustered around several centroids, and then you see some trailing outliers. Now again, didn't know why they were outliers at this moment, but a little research, and you'll find that the second line down here, John Couch. John's in jail for 240 months for prescription fraud. Right? And the reason why he stood out was that he was writing far more prescriptions than his peers. If I was able to scroll down, we'd find another doctor down there that actually, the reason that doctor, also in jail by the way, for prescription fraud, but the reason he was an outlier was that he was a pediatrician. And I don't know too many 2-year-olds that need Oxycontin on a monthly basis. Although every time I frickin' fly, there's always one. Obviously, he was not giving drugs to kids. He was writing it so that the parents could abuse Oxycontin. But so think about how you could just apply this to your own. The best machine learning that you can do is on stuff that no data scientist would have ever thought of, because it's particular to your organization. So if you start there and just kind of learn about what you could find, then you can maybe move up to a commercial tool when you're ready, because you know exactly what it is you want to be looking for. So what about the logs, Robert? You used to work at Splunk? So passive hash detection. And by the way, these slides will be available to everybody. Passive hash not too common anymore, right? But I would, if you haven't used this before, I would run it against your history, right? Just see if people were passing the hash in the old logs. And it still may turn up, depending on your environment. Finding unauthorized DNS. DNS in general. If you want to start looking for proof of evil in your environment, DNS is a great place to start. So you can start by looking for unauthorized DNS. This is just 3 ways to write the same query. You can look for DNS spoofing activity. The second one there, finding clients connecting to multiple DNS servers. That was kind of brilliant. One of my peers wrote that one. And it's like, why? Oh, yeah. So how many DNS servers does any one host particularly know about? Usually 2, right? Yeah, I mean, you might be round-robining your DNS, but by default, they know about 2. If it's connecting to all sorts of DNS servers and it's not part of the round-robin sequence, that's going to be weird. Check that out. Extremely long DNS. Right, this is data exfiltration. The numbers in here, like 2 standard divs, 2 characters long, that's not a magic number, it's a place to start. You're gonna have to tweak it up and down, but you should be able to, especially if you're seeing lots of super long DNS queries coming from the same host, that's probably data exfiltration. So I've been doing, like I said, some research into API This is a really great API dad joke. Some cool things that I found out here that you can start doing for free. So the first is, one of the big, it's amazing. You would have thought we would have learned all of our faults when web apps were the big problem 20 freaking years ago, right? But instead, we're making the exact same mistakes in the API space now that APIs are blowing up. So there's a tool called Kite Runner. It's free. Katie Paxton Fear has a YouTube video on how to use it. It's amazing. You give it a place to start, and it starts scanning for API endpoints, which confused me at first because I'm like, endpoints? That's like a certain, host or whatever. No, endpoints are just a path in an API, and each thing that the application does is one of those endpoints. So, but what they've done is they scan the whole freaking internet for APIs to look for word lists, to create patterns, because the naming conventions in API paths tend to follow kind of the same thing. It would be like this app, v1, blah, 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 get, and yeah. So you can run that against your existing. So remember we also talked about shadow IT, and it was like, the IT guys that needed to stand up some stuff really quick so they'd throw a server under somebody's desk or whatever. I even did, I snuck down into the data center and put some taps in when nobody was looking because they wouldn't freaking do it for me and I needed to monitor that line. But now shadow IT seems to be the devs. The devs are putting APIs out in the cloud faster than you can keep up with them. A lot of people concerned about shadow API. So Kite Runner will get it for you if you're allowed to scan the environment. If you're not allowed to scan the environment, I've got a second tip there, but that'll at least tell you what you're dealing with. And if you're dealing with thousands more than you expected, that's a big problem. The really sad thing is there are free tools for the devs to document their APIs. They don't even have to lift a frickin' finger. So if they don't know about it, help them find those free tools, drop it into the CI/CD pipeline, everybody will be happy and it's no extra work for them. Web scanners, traditional web scanners, not so great at testing the vulns in APIs. So here's 3 and there's a couple more as well. Free open source vulnerable APIs to test your testing tools with. So stand one of those up. Some of them are hosted on the internet, others you're gonna have to pop a VM up or something like that. But if you run like your White Hat or your Qualys or your Nessus against these APIs and you get very little back, you are missing a ton of shit out there because these are very vulnerable APIs and you should come back with a lot of results. So if you don't get vulnerabilities, come back and check. Postman can be used to configure security tests just as easily it is to test for just the quality of the API or the functionality, the happy path. I love happy path. I found out about happy path a while ago. I'm like, yeah, devs do a lot of good stuff. Deception practices will actually work here too. So do things like create endpoints not in your Swagger or your spec file. Then put deceptive comments in the messages that come back. Like, oh yeah, the admin path is here. Or admin equal true, making them think that there might be an admin that can be turned on. You can even replace, like if you're doing a little bit of proxy interception, you can replace 400 and 500 codes with a fake 200 code and say, yeah, dude, this is cool. You also want to check out this stuff over here. If anybody attempts to interact with those honey endpoints, you've probably got someone at least trying to abuse your API. So how much time do I have left here? Oh, we have a little extra time. I was going to finish, but I'm going to jump ahead. There's a couple other tips and tricks that I can give you all that I didn't know if I'd have time for. So let's see here. So when I was at Splunk, we were working on a thing called RBA. Very clever way to leverage any indexing tool. So whether it's Splunk or Graylog or whatever, the concept's pretty simple. When you're writing those alerts to your index, don't just write them to the index. Also, the index where all the alerts are. Also write them to a risk index. And every time you do a write into that index, either both apply some points of risk, and there's whole write-ups on it on some math that you can use. It's all freely available. Apply some points of risk, and then also map it to whatever MITRE tactic or technique that it would map to. And then every 5 minutes, every day, whatever makes sense for the handful of rules that you're going to have to write. You're going to write some rules that say, hey, in the last 24 hours, did any host or person exceed so many points of risk? And you can make those points different for different OUs, stuff like that. If someone or something goes over that threshold, alert on that. Because that's, and this is so much more effective than a lot of the UBA stuff that's out there, right? Because when it accrues enough points of risk, and you'll have to tweak, that's too weird to be normal for that environment. Nobody else is popping off like that. If our second rule that you could write is, hey, in the last 3 weeks, has any host exhibited alerts that touch more than 3, or whatever you're gonna have to tweak it to, minor tactics or techniques? Which is much better than just trying, typically when a host starts popping off a lot of alerts, it's the same one, going over and over again, right? By doing it this way, we filter out all that duplication, and instead we're just looking for the oddities that come out, right? So very effective way, in just some simple testing, we saw true positive rates go way up, and false positive rates drop considerably. Quick example of it here. So this is what you would see in a typical alert dashboard in any sim. Oh shit, what did I just do? No, there we go. When we apply risk into this risk index, a separate index just for accumulating risk, what we get is something like this, where you've got a typical phishing compromise. This host gets compromised, starts connecting to other servers. There were alerts that indicated on possibly things like PowerShell and scheduled tasks, other oddities that by themselves maybe would not have caught your attention, but altogether you end up with these basically super alerts where you can see like a 24-hour threshold or a certain number of minor tactics and techniques. And what the analyst gets, and God, I hope you can see that, what the analyst gets is a set of alerts that even like your intern should be able to look at this shit and go, whoa, okay, so we saw a net share, we saw some who am I, a service account was targeted. This should send anybody spidey sense tingling, right? And you can do all sorts of things like that, like who am I plus a couple other commands seen that an attacker would usually run. That's a great super alert, right? Any one of those things, like just seeing who am I, maybe not such a big deal. But if they're doing who am I and then a net stat and then something else, well, either someone's troubleshooting or someone's on your system trying to figure out what they've got. Ooh, I gotta reduce that again. So that's a good one. You can even then map things out because you're basically creating relationships between everything. And wow, okay, and that's it. So with that, don't forget, hopefully I've given you a lot of great information. Oh, come on, please. There we go. Hopefully I've given you a lot of great information. Crap. All right, so because only you can prevent InfoSec dumpster fires, thank you very much. So, not quite the build I was hoping for, but so any questions, or even better, anybody else that's had to think of like a clever way to get around the fact that we don't have budget to secure up a particular environment or particular problem or anything like that, and or any questions? No clever idea? Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you.
What would be your advice on documenting some of the honeypots and things that you make so that when somebody comes in the future trying to fix a problem or like doing pen testing?
Oh, right, yeah, good point. Well, so for one, unless you've got a really advanced team, I wouldn't even go with the honeypots. There's so much freaking work. But what I would suggest, even better, honey people. So one of my friends came up with this idea of creating people like, payroll people on LinkedIn and stuff. And then when people try to do the, oh, I'm the CEO and you've got to send me some money shit, they'll be like, okay, and it's one of the security guys that's having the conversation with them, and then they'll actually try and log into the site that they're going to use to try and either do the money transfer or try and get someone to log in or whatever, and then they'll say, oh, it's not working. Oh yeah, it's not working. And then they'll give them a different environment, like the backup one. They're like, oh yeah, that's not one. Didn't you get the money yet? It's not working. And they're starting to now enumerate the attackers. As far as documenting like some of the honey token stuff out there, if you've got like some sort of SIM or something like that, that would probably be the easiest way to annotate it, because you could just attach the notation to whatever's significant, the IP address or the database or whatever it is that you've honey tokened, and then that should be something prominent in the alerts itself, so that so if you start getting alerts on it and nobody knows what it is, I think that'd be probably the easiest place to document that, right? Because it will always be there. Great question though. Anyone else? Nope. All right. Well, I think I'm the only thing between you and beer, so I'm not going to stand there for very long. Thanks, everyone. And feel free to drop me a note. I can always get you. I think they're going to post the slides, but I'll happy to send it to you too if you want. So thanks and have a good night.